You're listening to The Bird Bath. This episode of The Bird Bath is brought to you by the Bird Bath Terminal, the search engine for the U.S. veterinary industry. If you've ever tried to figure out who exactly owns a practice, how many DVMs they have, what their corporate parent is paying for sites in your market, or where their next acquisition wave is heading, you know the data's everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Spreadsheets from 2019, half-dead directory sites, and a friend of a friend who used to work there. Terminal pulls it all into one place. Every US vet practice, every corporate group, every local roll-up, hiring signals, revenue estimates, and contact data layered on top. Search it like Google, filter it like a CRM, and export it when you need to act on it. Whether you're scoping a market, building a recruiting pipeline, raising a fund, or running corporate strategy, it's the fastest way to go from a question to an answer. Head to thebirdbath.io/terminal to learn more, or click the link in the show notes. Welcome back to The Bird Bath. Each week we scrape the surface of the news you need to know, so let's get into it. Kicking us off this week is a little bit of a finger-pointing game happening from some of the big pharma companies. The National Advertising Review Board has referred Merck Animal Health to both the FTC and the FDA over how it's marketing Bravetco Quatum, which is their year-long, as they would say, injectable flea and tick shot for dogs. Now, the NARB, which is part of the Better Business Bureau, which there were a mountain of layers. I had to dig into all of this. But basically, someone at Elanco was the first one to point their finger and say, hey, hold on, it's not a 12-month shot. It's not one full year of flea and tick prevention. It's 12 months for most ticks, but only 8 months for Lone Star ticks. So the challenge that Elanco put out there was they said that the advertising language for Bravetco Quatum that says 1 full year of flea and tick protection and 365 days of protection all in one dose are inaccurate. And they seem to have caught the right attention from the review board, and they said that the broad full-year framing is misleading and the disclaimers were buried. Merck has agreed to add clearer Lone Star tick disclosures, but they're refusing to change the headline 365-day language, saying that it would really hurt them against their competitors. This is a drug that people have been raving about, the fact that it is a 1 year or once a year shot, but for places that have the Lone Star ticks, they are going to need to be seeing those pets more frequently. Obviously, Elanco's the one pointing their finger at this, but there's a lot of other companies that are probably happy to see this getting a little bit of difficulty. Zoetis with Simparica Trio, and kind of the other people that don't have a one-shot, once-a-year pitch really are in a tough spot as they compete against Bravetco. Or Bravetco Quatum. Sorry, let me use the full and correct name. This regulatory body is more of a piece that can point you to people that have actual teeth, the FTC and the FDA, but aren't one that can really enforce any of these things. So more to come as we track this and see what they're going to do. It's definitely something that Merck can say, tough luck, wait till the FTC and the FDA have a problem with it, but we'll just have to see sort of where the chips fall with this whole marketing campaign. On the fresh food side of things, Freshpet's board has authorized a $150 million share repurchase. With no expiration, it's an open-ended buying opportunity for when management thinks the stock is below their intrinsic value. Now, there's a lot of context behind this. You know, a stock repurchase or a share repurchase isn't always the most exciting story here. But the reason why I thought this one was important for people to think about was the fact that the stock is down about 40% year to date. They hit a 52-week low this month at just over $46 per share. And Q1, though, was actually really good for them. Their net sales were $297.6 million. They returned to profitability, and they even raised their full-year sales guidance. So if you're wondering why did the stocks get punished, well, their margins were down. Their EBITDA guidance stayed flat, even as their sales growth ticked up. And the problem here is that people are saying, well, you're growing the top line, but not the bottom line. And when that happens, some of the big guys will step out. So Champlain, who's a large owner of the shares, dumped $125 million of shares mid-May, and then Engaged Capital sold their $28 million position last week as well. So the difficulty here is once big investors start pulling out, the stock begins to drop as well. You're flooding the market, you're having a difficulty here, but they're doing better, right? The numbers are going up for Freshpet. The other thing that was really interesting, though, is that the management team saying, hey, you're getting it wrong, and we're happy to be the buyers here. They have the cash available from one thing that I thought was very interesting. I talked about this story, but as I was reading this, it sort of rejogged it. But Freshpet had a minority stake in Ollie, which was another fresh food company that sold to Agrolimon in February for $600 million, 2.7 times revenue of the business from some of the reports. So the fresh food sector is doing well. That was a really large exit. Stocks are down for Freshpet, but they're saying things are going up. So they've got great operational efficiencies and they're seeing a positive free cash flow. So it's an interesting one to watch here. As of recording, we've got Memorial Day, keeping the markets closed on Monday. The stock closed at just over $51, $51.58, which was up. So things are turning, perhaps. They're not at their all-time low, so that's better. And if you look at their 5-year figures, they're trading around their pre-pandemic numbers when we saw things go kind of crazy for them, peaking at $176 a share. So big numbers over the last half decade here, but it's definitely something that we're going to continue to see. They've got some new leadership in the company. So I, for one, am interested to see where Freshpet takes this. Now, our final story is a report from Boehringer Ingelheim, which I feel like, are we turning into the vet med or the animal health pharma podcast? Because that's kind of what we've been hitting on a lot. But, you know, they're bringing out the news. They're keeping things interesting for us. But BI dropped year 2 of its Going Beyond campaign. They did a fresh global study of vets. They sampled over 1,000 veterinarians across 51 countries. They partnered with some of the incredible associations, the World Small Animal Veterinary Association, the World Association for Bariatrics, the AAEP, the AASV, and really sort of spanned the entire world to figure out what's going on. So lots of great associations. Year 1, they surveyed pet owners, and now year 2, they're going to the vets themselves to figure out what's going on. So the vets were asked what was the most overlooked part of their work. Pet vets, as they called them. 87% of the companion animal veterinarians, is what I usually call them, right, said spotting hidden health problems and pain was the most overlooked part of their work. Equine vets, about 60% of them fell in the same bucket there. They were able to catch early signs no one else could see. One that got really interesting as you're thinking about the entire optionality of work for veterinarians, livestock and swine vets both had some interesting stuff. They said 65% of them said that food chain safety was something that was overlooked as part of their work, and 62% said disease surveillance was an extremely important part of their work that most people overlooked. And, you know, that sort of view of it is heavily backed up by the data. 6% of human infectious diseases pass between animals and humans, and 70% of emerging human diseases originate in animals. We talked about the hantavirus. We're seeing new outbreaks of Ebola. Even COVID was deemed to be potentially, I don't know, I'm not going to go into the whole conspiracy of it, but perhaps stemming from bats or animals in fresh markets there as well. Livestock vets also brought out something pretty interesting in their view of the survey. They highlighted the fact, and from a lot of the groups here, they showed that 34% of global food protein supply relies on livestock, and those veterinarians and the care that they provide allows over a third of all global food protein to be able to be taken care of from that sense. Arcangelo Gentile, who's the president of the World Association of Bariatrics, said livestock veterinarians are guardians of our food supply and frontline defenders against diseases that can cross from animal to people. So super important, especially as we're facing more of this going on, the increased globalization of the world and the movement of people from one place to the other. So from last year's report, though, I thought it was kind of interesting to think about how pet owners are saying that they're viewing the vet professionals they work with. 94% of animal owners say that they appreciate their veterinarian. 91% of them call their vet teams essential or important to a society. 93% appreciate the level of care their own vet provides. So massive respect and numbers for the work that the veterinarians are doing by pet owners. But only 66% think vets need a high resilience to manage the stress. They ranked their stress levels lower than doctors, police, firefighters, and teachers. 65% of pet owners also believe that vets have a good work-life balance. 48% of vets in the 2024 survey said that owners underappreciate their work-life sacrifices. So 2/3 of the owners that are bringing their pets into you every single day think that everything's great for you. But half of the vets that respond to these surveys are telling you, nah, things aren't great. We need more support. More of this was underpinned by some studies and numbers that came out from the USDA. They've got a great site highlighting where some of these gaps of care are, where underserved communities are. We're seeing a sort of pushback on some of the additional non-compete language from some of the large corporate groups that had one of these overturned recently, and a lot more. So big things happening across the entire globe as how people are viewing the veterinary industry, and more is changing. So stay tuned and make sure that you keep up to date with everything we've got going on. And for more on these and other stories, join us by subscribing to our Substack. There's a link in the bio. And don't miss out on any episodes by subscribing and rating the show. For The Bird Bath, I'm Ryan Leach. See you next week.